And boom, we're back for another episode of Alfacast. I'm Mike Winter, and I'm here as always with the infatigable Dr. Bear Lando in his lab, pumping out new formulations left and right. Thanks to all of the new Alfa Vedic family members that have come over from us from Archaics. Really cool. We were on with Jason on Monday and to a wonderful show, and we've really melded well with that community. So thanks to all the new members coming over. And if you're interested to know more about us, join us at alfavedic.com, alfavedic.com. We're on today with two of my favorite humans on the entire in the planet or wherever you reside. Um, we've hung out together in person many a time, had a fantastic actually experience in Mexico last year, and I'm so excited to dive into this topic today. Bear, anything real quick housekeeping before we get in with this with Sophie and Yerasimos?
Not really, just busy, extremely busy. We're launching an entire new product line, and then some, and revamping everything, and that is right on the heels of harvest. So here in my lab, I've got stuff curing and fermenting and distilling and sonicating and all this stuff to get everything in a bottle so we can get it off to our customers. And I'm quite proud of everything we're doing right now. There's nothing in the entire industry that is even resembling what we're doing here.
That's very cool.
Yeah, I was actually just even tasting the pet essentials right before I got on. You guys would actually dig this, Yerasimos and Sophie, just because you have furry friends. But our new pet,
You wanna see something? This is my setup.
Ah, a little
Our furry
Chihuahua
friend is
pillow.
always right behind me.
I mean,
I
she's
could
not technically a
recall.
Chihuahua, but she kind of looks like one a little bit. But yeah, little Rosie.
I think
little Rosie.
I don't know. It looks to me like a Chihuahua might have snuck in the woodpile there
I,
somewhere.
I
What
think
kind
it,
of
She's
dog is that?
apparently mainly poodle, but
no,
say she's poodle
Poodle.
on the
well, that was
inside.
just based on some like crazy test that we took. But she had like 8 different breeds according to these tests, and who knows how accurate they are. But she had like
So is she?
terrier.
So is she kind of fluid? Like if she wants to identify as a Chihuahua, can she do that?
We
Yes,
just
for
say she's
sure.
a different dog per pound.
Ah,
She's just
well, we had a Chihuahua for many years, and may her soul rest in peace.
mm,
We had a heartbreaker. She left us a couple years ago, but now we have a Australian Shepherd who
wow,
has
beautiful.
equally found her way into our hearts.
It's
Yeah.
amazing. We just got a couple new cats too. So what are these pet essentials?
Oh, it's our C60 product with the liposomal delivery system that is fantastic and tasty. I was just tasting it before we came on actually, and it's actually fully fine for humans to ingest. And we love our furry friends, so it's a phenomenal product that will extend your animal's life and keep them vital. And keep them strong, and highly recommend checking out on our website. And if you guys want, we'll shoot you over one. Yeah, check out our stuff. We've upgraded a lot since maybe you've looked at our product line in the past. So if anything piques your interest, send you a little care package.
And a lot of it isn't even up on the internet yet, but over the next month, you'll see, like radical changes. And if I had a life do-over, no regrets with what I did, but I would become a veterinarian because I
Mm.
have a great fondness for animals, and yeah, that's what
That
I do.
industry's yeah, that
And I
industry's
ended
messed
up
up too.
treating animals very often during my practice. People would bring them in and they got better very quick because they didn't have the ability to outsmart themselves like humans do.
Indeed. Well, we are coming to you live from the great state of Jefferson up on the Smith River, where animals flow like wine here, like fine wine. On my cams, my trail cam out back, I swear I catch something every night. It's really fun being around so much wild animal life, as you guys too are in Topanga. I mean, you guys get that, I'm sure. Coyotes, raccoons, skunks, opossums, all that stuff flowing through your
Mountain
yard.
lions,
Yeah.
bobcats.
Ooh,
Apparently, we now have a
Raccoons that poop in your pool too. I mean, shit, we get it all.
now we
raccoons
now
are
even have
rascals.
a Topanga bear. Apparently,
Whoa,
there's a black
seriously.
Did he come over from West Hollywood or? No. Okay. Bad joke. Well, I'm excited to be here with you guys today. We always have so much fun when we're hanging, and let's just get into it, because we're not talking about animal design today. We're talking about human design. And I'm excited for this because as I was telling Bear over the summer, I've really jumped into this, you guys, and I'm using it with my family. And I can't wait to glean some more knowledge about this from you guys who know much more about this and implement this in your teachings. Institutionalized constructs operating under the guise of healthcare, finance, and governance are presently facing a well-deserved and scathing scrutiny as more awaken to the realization of the systemic deceit that has brought us to the brink of utter ruination. Every cloud has its silver lining, though, and our present predicament is no exception. The growing distrust of education, medicine, media, etc., has urged many to look elsewhere, with the awareness that health, prosperity, and happiness are an inside job. On this very special Alfacast, Sophie Fletcher, PhD, and Yerasimos Stillianessis return to share further insights into the practice of human design as a tool for personal transformation. Yerasimos is the co-host of the great Here for the Truth podcast, the co-creator of the transformational 10-week group coaching program, Rise Above the Herd, and the co-creator of Friends of the Truth, a private membership community home to some of the most grounded, rational, and intuitive truth seekers online. Both Bear and I have had the pleasure of coming on in the private with you guys and hanging out with that crew. Having spent more than 20 years on his own truth-seeking journey, Yerasimos is passionate about helping others committed to their own evolution become the fullest expression of who they are meant to be. Drawing from an extensive background in psychology, human design, somatic therapies, holistic health modalities, and the performing arts, Yerasimos brings a multidimensional approach to personal growth and transformation. As a staunch advocate for radical self-responsibility, conscious action, and self-knowledge, he is dedicated to uplifting the human spirit and guiding others to step into their true purpose and highest potential. And then his lovely partner, Dr. Sophie Fletcher, PhD, believes that the body carries profound wisdom, communicating through symbols and symptoms that reveal the unconscious aspects of ourselves. Her approach is centered on deeply listening to these subtle cues, using them as doorways to uncover and integrate the hidden elements of the psyche that may be limiting one's growth and well-being. With a master's degree in spiritual psychology and a second master's and PhD in depth psychology, she likes to torture herself, I guess. With an emphasis in somatic studies, Sophie is devoted to following the innate intelligence of the body. Her comprehensive training spans somatic experiencing, the neuroaffective relational method, human design, various bodywork and energetic clearing modalities, gamma breathwork, advanced autonomic nervous system techniques, Germanic New Medicine, and relational life therapy. These modalities empower her clients to engage with their inner world more consciously, leading to profound self-awareness and personal growth. Anchored in compassion and presence, Sophie ensures that each session offers a deeply meaningful and resonant connection. Her focus is on honoring the body's inherent wisdom, guiding clients on a transformational journey towards personal empowerment and wholeness. And we have all their links in the show notes below. As we're not streaming on LooshTube today, we're on Rumble and Odyssey, Fakebook, and Unite. This will be on YouTube later. But so honored to be amongst this lovely couple here. Bear Lando, take it away, my friend.
Yes, and I would have some very terse comments about YouTube right now, but I would, understand that I'd just be talking to their bots and not even reaching human ears. So anyway. Shame on you guys anyway. Yeah, we were naughty, said some things that went contrary to the prevailing narrative when it comes to medicine last time. So we're taking a little vacay. But YouTube, we will be back using you to spread our message. What, next week or the following week, Mike? How long do we have to sit in the corner?
I think we'll be back tomorrow. So this will premiere on YouTube as well, most likely tomorrow. I think the strike releases tonight.
Okay, well, this is good. We have an opportunity to, develop our audience on other platforms. So Sophie and Yerasimos. So awesome to see you guys again. Thanks for making time for us. And yeah, I really enjoyed, always enjoy having you guys here. And then also Yerasimos, I was on with you and I was honored to be your guest. We had kind of a fun chat there, from my perspective. So I expect that again today. I don't know if we want to stay exclusively on the topic of human design today. I just want to say that out front so you guys know that there's no guidelines. We can go wherever you'd like. I'm acutely interested in human design because I haven't become an ardent student yet, although I've just sort of, done a cursory review so I kind of get the gist of it. And maybe we could start off our conversation. Either one of you can jump in with, from your perspective, how human design works, because it is sort of a, con let's just say a conflation of
amalgamation, I guess.
yeah, yeah. Thank you. For a lot of different disciplines, astrology and a number of other things, including I Ching, which is interesting because I always did medical I Ching. I still do, and it's become part of my little thing that I was indoctrinated into when I was doing an apprenticeship with Japanese meridian therapy. So, how the heck does that stuff translate into you being able to discern what's going on with somebody else? Now, we talk a lot about how that might be possible from the perspective of the vibrational sciences, much, the flip side of the electromagnetic based sciences. So, if somebody could just kind of get us off on how that works and what human design is about. And then again, we can use that to segue into any other topics you'd like. And thank you again for being with us, you guys.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having us. I love you both dearly. I have such a deep respect for both of you, and just having the opportunity to come hang out and chat about this stuff is cool. Yeah, I mean, I obviously, Sophie and I love human design. It's a system that, I mean, I came across, I think maybe 11, 12 years ago, but then really kind of got a little bit more into it, a couple of years after that. The first thing I just want to say is, like anything else, it's a system. It's a tool to use. I'm not dogmatic really about anything. It's one of those things. You're a human being. You live life. You come across material. You come across a system. You come across a tool. And does it support you? Does it allow you? Does it resonate with you? Does it allow you to understand yourself on a deeper level? Great. And if not, then you put it aside and you go on something else. So I'm not some like hardcore like human design is the only way. You must study it 100% and follow it. But to start off a little bit, I don't want to get too deep into like what makes it up, because I like to get practical with it. But yeah, human design integrates four ancient systems: Western astrology, a nine-centered chakra system, the Kabbalah tree of life that relates to the channels in human design and how energy kind of moves through the channels, and the Chinese I Ching. And then two modern sciences. I know these days a lot of things are being debunked and challenged, but from a human design standpoint, based on the original, how this information was given to this gentleman, Robert Allen Krakauer, who's known as Ra Uru, and we can get into the story of how he received that, which is pretty trippy. The two modern sciences are an understanding of neutrinos, which supposedly are really small subatomic particles that are traveling through whatever this place is, and carrying mass and dropping off mass. And then the genetic code. So the 64 genetic codons correlate with the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching and the 64 gates of human design. But ultimately, for me, it's like I put people's birth information into a chart, and I get their chart, and I go from there.
Can I just bring up something real quick too, Yerasimos? Because we had a comment on our Telegram, and this is not knocking this comment, but I think it's great to illustrate this idea of this being a tool, as you're saying, and then there's a practical element to this. So someone was saying, I will not listen to this because human design comes out of black magic. And it's literally like human design is a transhumaning word, whatever that means. So, or wording, like, so there's this fear around transhumanism around it even. And my response was that, well, hopefully we can, if you are open to listening to this, because what I've found just by looking at the charts, what it illustrates is mind blowing in terms of how on point it is with my loved ones and myself. So there's something going on here. But that being said, and I'd love to get into a little bit of why we think that is, but and the cause behind that. But that being said, it is just a tool. So that's akin to saying a gun is evil in my mind, right? Where it's the user, right? So these
So
things like Kabbalah and I Ching, these are ancient technologies, ancient sciences. Go ahead, Barry.
and just one additional comment, the real black magicians are the ones that have cast dispersions on, this kind of discipline. And of course, they operate under the guise of religions. Religions meant to literally re-enlist people back into the fold if they start getting too into their individual spirituality. And unfortunately, we have many, well-intended, very people, dedicated people focused on their spirituality, but they're following one of these book religions. And of course, now they're very confined to, what is supposedly spirituality versus black magic and so forth. So, very devious plot. And being a recovering Catholic, nothing against Catholics, there's a lot of good things, that I experienced. Uh, yeah, Mike and I are both crossing ourselves just in case what I'm saying is incorrect, and I don't want to go
I'll
to
do
hell.
my Greek Orthodox, cross as well.
Well, being a former altar boy, I'll give you a little Dominus Patris et Spiritus Sanctus Sanctus Sanctus.
Thank you.
Yeah. So
perfect attendance Sunday school here for me in the Greek Orthodox
okay.
Church. So I get
yeah.
it.
So anyway, I just want to throw that out. So folks that are really casting stones at things they don't understand and just automatically saying it's black magic. Well, maybe take a look in your own backyard as far as where your information is sourced from, what their motives are, and what that whole agenda is about. So please go ahead.
Yeah. Well, and I just want to highlight too, because Sophie and I both come from a psychological background as well, and obviously she's focused on the academic side heavily, and stuff like that just makes me look at like, why is someone so rigid in their belief system and doesn't have the curiosity and the wonder to even take in and explore and like take it in and then go, this is bullshit, and then move on with your life, if you feel that way. So like, I think like the complete rigidity like just is highlighting something specific within the individual for them to look at. That's all I want to say about that.
I was thinking about that even with that comment, because sometimes I'll get a thing about human design or astrology even and stuff where it's like, oh well, that's like controlling, or it's putting someone in a box, or all the stuff. And I kind of feel like with any kind of personal awareness growth work, you can take it that way of like, I'm this according to this thing, and so there's no wiggle room, there's no growth, there's no expansion. It's just this like it's sort of this sentence. And you can use human design in that way of like, well, I'm a projector and therefore I don't have energy, and so I have to, blah blah blah. And it's sort of like, or it can just be sort of information to have at your disposal that you then get to play with. And sort of one of my things that I loved about human design when I started learning it is that every teacher I've ever learned from, it's like, it's experiential. You experiment with it, you try it out, you feel into it for yourself, you feel what resonates, what works. If it doesn't work, like, don't do it. I don't care. It doesn't affect my life. But if you're open to sort of like information and like, hey, this could be helpful in some situations, or for you to know that like your aura works differently than someone else's, does that resonate like from your past? So instead of using it as sort of like putting in a box and sort of like a sentencing, it's more like, hey, these are some things that could be really helpful, and just give you some little tips and tricks in terms of how you just are designed to be. And another thing is that I love, even you said, the individuality of really feeling into yourself. It's like, I love that it is known as the science of differentiation, that we are all different. We are not designed the same way. Even if there's similarities, it'll be different configurations, and like how I show up is different than the other projector shows up, or all these different pieces make up you as your unique, beautiful spark. that's needed for whatever reason in the world. And is if we can align ourselves even more with that and sort of get these the cheat manual, I say, to like how I work best, like why wouldn't I do that? Why wouldn't I want to know a little bit more about that so I can stop looking at someone else? Because I feel like that's sort of like a lot of the conditioning of the world is like competition, or looking at that person has this or that, or I should be like that, or I should be this way, or and human design for me just like strips all of that away in terms of like, I'm literally designed differently. Why am I trying to be that way? Why would I be trying to like swim upstream against my own flow? And just keep experimenting with it on sort of
Yeah,
what.
I don't gather anything deterministic about human design. And I'd say, that would be the only issue I would have. Some of the archaic ways of practicing astrology, of course, they're saying this is going to happen and so forth. Yeah, no, that's not what human
Yeah.
design's about. And, rather than just confining ourselves to a surface level of psychology, why not have information on a real scientific level as far as what really makes us tick? So I think that could be of great value. And if we're worried about deterministic sciences, look no further than, say, genetic theory of the medical mainstream. It's like, okay, you're going to have this disease because your mother had it, and you got dealt this deck of cards. That's who you are. There's no going outside of those boundaries. So I see human design and similar disciplines being very freeing as well as much more valid. So sorry, Yerasimos, you were about to say something.
Well, yeah, real quickly. I mean, one of my favorite quotes is from, I think, Aristotle, like knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. And so it's a tool and it's a system for self-knowledge. And it's a tool and a system for bringing you back to yourself and accepting yourself and loving yourself and understanding what makes you unique and understanding what your gifts are and how to bring them into the world and to shine back the light on you that you are the authority of your life, not going to some external potential savior that's going to tell you how to live your life. And we could probably get into this later, but from a human design standpoint, we're moving into this new 400-year cycle in 2027. And one of the major themes of that is going to be coming back to yourself as an individual, radical self-responsibility, self-reliance, decentralization, moving away from collectivistic structures, which, Mike, you mentioned in the beginning, like all these systems around us are crumbling. And so it's like I think the reason human design is getting even more popular now is because it is highlighting that you need to know yourself, love yourself, accept yourself, and understand what makes you unique and different. Then coming together in community from that place where we're honoring one another, as opposed to sacrificing our individuality because whoever is the leader of the collective, whether it's mom, dad, president, whoever, is saying you all shall behave and live this way. And it's like, no, I'm a human being. I know that I exist. What lights me up, what excites me, what can I bring into this world, and move from that place.
Brilliant. Could you
Yeah.
elaborate a little bit? Uh, I was just going to say, could you elaborate a little bit more on the 400-year cycle?
Yeah.
And is that an overlay? Is that the original design? What's the purpose?
It from what I know, and I don't sit here and say that I'm all knowing in human
Mhm.
design and I'm the world's foremost expert, but I definitely feel like I know more than most people because most people don't even know human design. That being said, is just like in your own chart, you have your own incarnation cross, which is like a theme, a life theme, part of your
Mhm.
purpose and mission in this life. Earth has goes through 400-year cycles. So we're moving from the incarnation cross of the cross of planning to the cross of the sleeping phoenix, which I believe, I don't have your charts in front of me, but I think, Mike, that's your incarnation
Yep.
cross. And so it is this overlay, this shift. Now it's not something that just happens. Like 2027 happens and all of a sudden everything changes, but we're already experiencing that movement of these structures that are sort of falling apart and crumbling: media, government, education, etc. And we're moving to this place, like I said before, where it's like these other things are going to be more of a focus.
Yeah, I love the
And
idea of planetary design to, or like this is a being we're on, right? And that it has its own design and it goes through its own cycles like we do. So it's reincarnating and going through its thing, probably dependent upon the collective consciousness of all of us humans on here. But I'll just say this, like in terms of deterministic and all that, just one thing that's really congruent with human design is this idea of reincarnation, right? That we're coming back, right? He agreed with that. And there's a lot of evidence, like there's a posteriori, or how do you say it? There's physical evidence, scientific evidence even, that reincarnation is real. There's been a lot of studies on this in terms of even seeing physical marks on people that remembered who they were, and they went back and looked in pictures and they had the same birthmark at the same place and the same facial structure. And it seems like reincarnation has pretty much, in my mind, been proven. So it's not deterministic in that this is your one shot. This is based on your past lives and the destinies you've created for yourself. And this is just, in a way, what this current live stream has to offer you and what you've decided to have, right? So it's good to know what you're coming into, but this isn't only it. And the idea is to work with the gifts that you have in this go around, so that ideally, and I don't know what he thought on this, but what Bear and I say is to get off the wheel finally. But it's not deterministic. It's based on everything you've done in your life. And it's sort of your destiny based on free will. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think anyone listening could agree, like, you have certain things you lean towards that you prefer, that like make you unique. Like, well, you know, my mom and dad like did this and behave this way, but that doesn't really land and resonate with me. Unfortunately, one of the big, well, it's fortunately from a human design standpoint, but unfortunately, you know, we go through life. We have parents, we have caretakers, we have school, we have culture, etc., that condition us, that move us away from this unique blueprint, this unique fingerprint of who we are. And so part of life, especially once you become an adult, is like, okay, recognizing those first years of your life, what you went through, you know, maybe some traumas and wounding and conditioning that happen, and going, well, you know, where am I now? What is my life? Because I think at the end of the day, the proof is in the pudding. Like, if you're not fulfilled, if you're not satisfied, if you're not happy, if you're depressed, if you don't feel like you know yourself, then it's like, okay, well, I need to figure something out. I need to do something different. And human design provides a tool to help guide you back home to your nature, to this blueprint. And it's something that's really supported me. I mean, a lot of these different esoteric systems, whether it's numerology, astrology, you know, I'm into the source cards as well, which are known as destiny cards. Like, they give you opportunities to often affirm something you know deep down in yourself. Like, these systems, for me, I don't like go to a reading with an astrologer or a human design person and sit there and go, oh, I didn't really know that about myself. It's more like, fuck yes, I know this deep in my bones. This is who I am. These are my gifts. And so they just affirm things for you, and you stake your flag in the ground even more. Like, I'm Yerasimos, or I'm Sophie, I'm Bear. Like there's something unique wanting to come forth from within me as the creator of my life. And you know, like, so human design has helped me just own myself more and be like, kind of, fuck it, I don't need to operate how you operate. I know who I am. I can stand on 2 feet on the ground and live my life, honor my strategy and authority, and see what happens.
And Mike said the key word there, which is free will. And even a lot of Eastern spiritual schools are talking about, you know, like back in the 80s when the New Age thing was in full fledged, you know, I'd see somebody and, hey, how you doing? Oh, just doing my karma. So, you know, there's nothing that says we have to do anything. Karma, what's the difference between that and original sin? You know, in Catholicism, it's this predeterminism again. So it sounds to me like what you guys are saying is that we aren't beholden to any of that. And from my belief is all we have to do is forgive and forget, and not forgive because we did bad things, but forgive, okay, maybe the circuitous route we've taken through our, you know, traveling through reincarnations. On the other hand, well, let me ask you this: what's getting off the wheel look like? Where do we go? You know, what is that? Yeah.
Do you mean like getting off the wheel, like just no longer returning?
Well, I would use the term ascension, but then that, gets a lot of flack from different circles. And, um, you know, uh, ascension just seems like a real normal natural process. If you look at, if you study into different kinds of waveform mechanics and things, you see even the elements on the periodic table go through different transmutational processes and, never stay the same. So human consciousness, which has the attribute of free will, wouldn't it make sense, since that would kind of put us in the category of powerful spiritual beings, does it make sense that we would just stay on the wheel forever? And that was the whole purpose of our existence. It seems like we're designed to get off the wheel, by figuring things out, learning how to manage energy, and maybe be taken out of quarantine and then go build bigger and grander things somewhere else. So I don't know. How do you decipher all
Uh,
that?
I don't know, man, to be honest. I don't know what happens after I die. All I know is I've been given this gift of life, and I'm going to do my best to live it as properly as I can, and utilize the tools that support that.
Mhm.
I personally don't think that being human and living where we live now is some kind of prison sentence. I think it's the fucking greatest gift, and I enjoy it fully. So that's my thought on that from a more maybe just kind of practical standpoint.
Mhm.
What about
Yeah.
Raw? What's the human design? Does he get into that or?
If he does, it's not something that I personally have come across.
Mhm.
The
So
parts
I don't
that
know. I
I've
can't speak on that.
heard, the parts that I've heard with that are more about like if someone has like a completely open center, that might be that they've actually sort of learned all the gifts or the lessons from each of those gates in previously. That
Mhm.
doesn't mean that like in this lifetime you won't then reincarnate with one of those gates, the next time, if it's kind of like, okay, well, you need to learn another thing about it. But it's kind of like I've that's pretty much all I've heard really about it, is that like you're kind of working on these personality traits, on these gates that are defined within your chart, to kind of learn the highs, lows, learn more about it. Um, and sort of that like I guess that's sort of maybe the trajectory that it would go, but I'm hypothesizing about that,
Mhm.
just that little bit that I've read, particularly regarding incarnation. I've also read um that he said something like we always reincarnate with the same aura type. So being a projector, I would always be a projector. That doesn't have anything to do with gender. That doesn't have anything to do with
Mm.
anything on how my life would be. But it would be like that's my like that's the like the soul imprint of me learning these lessons or whatever the life experience would be. Um,
Mhm.
but something I was thinking about that because I grew up in like a spiritual community where the idea was that this is a school and it's sort of like where we learn, all the hard lessons, and it's really dense and it's really difficult, and the whole um, from my teaching, it was like the whole point is to like transcend the body, transcend the physical. This is like the negative bad part of us, and how I took that was like this place is punishment,
Mhm.
and had a lot of anger come up later in my healing journey around like I'm not supposed to be here, like I'm being punished for something that I didn't do, like all this stuff. And for me that resulted in like really deep depression for 22 years or so. And it was in my mid 20s going through more of getting into my body, into my somatic experience, and really being like, oh, this is actually kind of cool. Like I don't know what happens after in my framework so far, working framework. It's yeah, we leave our bodies and we're these eternal souls, and I don't know what happens next. But if there isn't a physical reality, like can I really enjoy a strawberry straight, straight from the plant? Can I enjoy like touch, like physical experience of matter coming together? And can I like all these things where I was like, how about I like switch into like I'm going to enjoy this so much because I have no idea what happens later. And all of in my spiritual community, it was like, a lot of it was that we go to different planes or different realms or different experiences. I know one of the things that my godmother once told me, because so my nickname when I was growing up was disaster area. Lovingly, I'm sure, but because I would just run into everything. Like I just didn't understand physical things hitting each other. And so I would just run it, like everything was just very chaotic around me. And
Maybe
I
partly due to
remember
your three line potentially.
probably, right? So there's also that we're going to bring in the human design. Like I'm a 3-5, a 3 in my profile. So in threes, we're trial and error. It's the martyr. It is the person who has to trip over the thing to realize, oh, I need to pick up my feet when I'm walking. It's the child that you can tell them a million times, don't touch the hot stove. You're going to get burnt. But for me as a 3 in my profile, until I touch that stove, I don't get it. Like I need to get the burn to like realize that. But anyway, so yeah, that's
It's
probably
also though
good.
why you're an great investigator and
Yeah.
doing everything you do now. Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
you learn it with your own experience, right? So it's the experiential learner. But as I was just gonna say, like I was told, oh, in your whatever the most recent lifetime was, you were on a planet or a realm or whatever that didn't have physical, it was all fluid. So there wasn't like a stop on things. And so I came in and was just kind of like, what the hell is happening? But yeah, so I always kind of think about that in terms of, for me, whatever reason, I had to flip into like, this isn't a punishment. I didn't do something bad or wrong that I'm here. It's to like my lesson. I feel like a main lesson has been to learn to enjoy this, like learn to, oh, this is really cool to experience hitting my knee on something or burning my hand on the stove and learning like about this reality, however it is, and how it shows up for me. And part of that with human design that really attracted me to human design, because I've been around like, astrology and a bunch of other things, but there was something about human design that like hit for me personally, where it's very somatic based. Like it's very body based in terms of like, it's very practical. It's very knowing how my body interacts in the world and how I make certain decisions or how I'm going to navigate things, how even relationally. So I've always been really, really intrigued by relational dynamics, and that's something about human design that I've really that's piqued my interest really strongly, is sort of these dynamics of how we're interacting on this more unconscious level a lot of the times, where even as parent to child, there's conditioning happening. It's not bad, it's not wrong, it's just happening. Like it's just the natural thing. And for me, oh hi buddy.
Oh my goodness.
here's
Oh, precious little one.
here's my new daughter here.
Oh my
Oh,
goodness.
oh my gosh. What a
Sorry,
love.
she just jumped on. I didn't
Absolutely.
mean to
No
interrupt.
worries. We're obsessed
No, that's
with dogs and
Yeah.
awesome.
She's a
One
one
thing
tree
you can look
yelper.
up, if you know sort of the general gist of when she was born, like I've looked up Rosie's, our dog's human or
Doggy
animal
design.
design. But it's fun to like then kind of feel into that. But that even goes with the relational dynamics that I was saying of like these things are just happening. But for me, when we're talking a little bit more, even with the person's comment and stuff like that, of like, for me, choice is freedom. Like freedom is just having choice and how we're going to do something. And we're talking about free will. That comes for me down to choice. So getting all this information or knowledge from human design is like, then I have more choice. Then I have more awareness of how I might be impacting or how I might be impacting others. And then I have more sort of like empowerment within my own being of how am I going to relate with this versus no, I'm just going to be at the whim of everything, nothing's happening. For me, that was a big shift of just like oh, if I know these things about myself and I know these things about the people around me, or if I know these things, even like looking at my parents' designs was huge for me, because it was like, oh, it's nothing wrong or bad. It's just certain conditionings that I'm going to get when I'm in their field, or certain dynamics that are going to get heightened when I'm around them based on certain things that happen in our designs coming together. Cool. Now I can be aware of it. One, not feel bad about it. Two, not blame them or be upset about it, but just be like, okay, that's happening. It's not the be all end all. How am I going to navigate it with more awareness? How am I going to navigate it where I can make the choices like, okay, I'm going to do more grounding before I go in. I'm going to feel more into my body before I go in. I'm going to do all these things, and then just be aware of those tendencies that are going to be there of like, oh, I'm going to be tapping into my mom's defined ajna and mind, because that's just how it's designed. Okay, cool. I'll just enjoy feeling her ideas and thoughts.
One thing I'll say
So
too is sorry to keep interjecting here, but there was a divine element to this. There was a
Yes.
divine creation, a creative element, that there is a hand of God involved, whether you want to call it creator, source, or whatever, and it's beautiful. And so that's another example of why this isn't a prison planet. But when you look at human design, it really illustrates that we are here to bring beauty and love through our own unique gifts and talents.
Yeah.
I was just go ahead, Sophie.
No, I was just agreeing. I said that.
Well, I was going to ask you if you agree with this. My perspective is that I don't believe the creator, whatever that means to somebody, creates anything negative or bad or out of balance and so forth. And however, us being co-creators and given free will, then we do create overlays through maybe our ignorance of how to manage energy in the first place. And of course, not a sin or bad, but so is human design really what it's picking up on somebody in a particular incarnation as far as their inclinations? Does it have to do with those overlays? And therefore, if so, obviously they're self-created. And I'd say the empowering thing about that realization might be that, well, if I created it, I can uncreate it. So therefore, I'm not beholden to anything outside of myself. And so human design is really maybe informing us things we have put in motion ourselves. I don't know. What would you say about all that?
Yeah, I mean, I would think that we choose. I mean, I come from that background of like, we choose
Mhm.
our families, we choose a lot of sort of, I go with more of like the larger lessons, or sort of like the
Mhm.
the larger aspects that we may our soul is contracting to go through. Then I come into more of the free will of like, then we get to choose how we're going to do that, how that's going to show up exactly. Like, I don't think it's all sort of planned out to a T, but it's kind of like, hey, like, this is something that you maybe struggled with in the past, or this is something that would be cool to learn and experience. Let's choose parents with X, Y, and Z, or let's, have you come to choice points of different ways, or sort of different configurations. But I definitely think that there's a higher order of, I guess, that karma, or I don't even know what to call it, but sort of like
Mhm.
things that were are more prevalent for
Mhm.
me in my life path than maybe yours or Yerasimos's or
Mhm.
Mike's. That for whatever reason, those are the things that I've chosen or want to put a little lens on, and that my human design could sort of guide me through that
Mhm.
in
I call it
certain
free
ways.
will destiny, personally.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Um, yeah. And then for me, it's like, okay, knowing my human design, again, it's just sort of like, how do I navigate this the best that I can? How can I really think of human design sometimes as like a little bit of like cheat codes of like, I do think we sort of come into this planet sort of like these brilliant, bright little souls who are our designs, like very like, we're just naturally that, because that's our natural essence. and then we're conditioned, and then we have society, and then we have and traumas and all the things that happen. And then later in life, there might be like a deconditioning process or certain things that can be like, oh, I can navigate that with more ease now that I have this awareness of myself. It's one of the reasons why Ra always said like human design is really for the kids. It's really like, it's great for the adults, but there's a lot more stuff to it, right? There's a lot more of that deconditioning to happen versus if you're just brought up with this, or if you're a parent and you have this with your kids, it's like, oh, I can just be more aware of this. And then there's hopefully going to be less deconditioning later, and they'll be able to actually like navigate the soul contracts or the lessons with more ease, sort of from get-go, rather than sort of like, oh, I have to do all this later. At the same time, I think that's part of also probably part of the contract, right? That we didn't know human. I mean, it wasn't actually around when we were like littles, but like growing up, like I mean, I came across it, I think it was like 14, 15 years ago. And now it's coming like really much more into consciousness. But I do think there's those pieces, as Yerasimos was saying, as we're in this shift, it's sort of like, and I don't get into the predictive stuff. I think human design does have like different transits and things like that. And even with this transition of the incarnation crosses, not wanting to get into any like predictive pieces of it, but just sort of like also like mirroring, looking at like what's happening in the world. Oh, Ra said that this was probably going to be happening as well. And I don't think it's like enough people on the planet know it, that that's where the shift is happening. Like it's sort of just a mirror of like, oh, this is just giving me information and sort of awareness around what's coming or what's happening at a larger scale that I'm already seeing. It's already happening within the culture, within the collective unconscious.
I just want to add something to this based on some stuff that has been brought up already, that, you know, when we talk about human design and we have this kind of blueprint, it makes me think of the concept of, I think I'm pronouncing this correctly, entelechy, where it's that like the actualization of our potential. And I know you're obviously into like, we're all into gardening and working the land. And it's like, to use the analogy of the acorn, you know, within that acorn is like the blueprint of the oak tree that's going to become, if it's, you know, the right soil, you know, the land, it's nurtured properly. And the same thing with the human being. We have this like unique blueprint. And if we're raised ideally and properly, you know, we're probably going to evolve into this beautiful human being. But for many of us, those early years maybe weren't ideal. We didn't have the right soil, the right nutrition. And so it's like we have some work cut out for us to kind of come back home to embody that person that we're born to be. And so that's kind of how I look at, you know, being human and these systems that highlight aspects of our unique nature.
So maybe another helpful thing is to look at reincarnation a little bit differently, just to go back to that topic.
Mm-hmm.
And we tend to look at it in a sort of a linear sequential fashion, which I don't believe that's really happening. You know, in my practice, we developed ways when we had to go into levels of the psyche and so forth that allowed us to jump timelines, we'll say, and not to go into these superficial sort of, oh, you were a Roman centurion and you got, you know, speared in the chest and that's why you have a heart attack. Now it's like, I heard that stuff so much when I was in practice. Sorry, but it used to drive me up the wall. But no, we're really talking about if you can get out of that linear kind of mindset, then all of a sudden you're looking at many dimensions of yourself, and there's a lot more possibilities open rather than just looking at this being the end point of a whole, you know, series of sequential, you know, kind of events. And interestingly, also, is this weekend I'm in a workshop with Dr. Kareem with biogeometry.
Oh, cool.
It's for advanced students. Oh, yeah, there you go. And so he has some new technologies developed that he's going to teach us how to use. And it's all about that. It's now we've done that before in biogeometry, but with these new ones, you're really getting in a lot more specific into timelines and jumping back and forth and literally using the past to heal the present and vice versa. And so, yeah, I think we make a mistake of just kind of getting in that rote linear kind of mindset. And, reincarnation could, let's just say, give us a lot more depth of understanding if we didn't do that.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
So coming into human design and the practicalities of it, want to get into that a bit, you guys, and explaining sort of what your process is, and maybe bringing somebody in for the first
Yeah.
time on how it all works, because it is quite fun.
Yeah. I mean, if I were to bring someone in for the first time, you're saying like how I would explain it to someone,
Well,
or
that's like the process. Well, we've already kind of explained the background, so now the
yeah.
actual processing of it, the charting and all that, like what's
I mean,
needed,
yeah.
required at first.
I mean, from the charting standpoint, there are different platforms, that you just input basic information and then a chart comes up.
It's
I
your
had
birth
your family's
based on
chart.
your birth information. So it's your time, your place. Yeah.
Yeah,
Your time specifically too, not only the date, but your specific time of when you came out of your mother,
yeah,
basically.
like when I witnessed my nephew's birth, like obviously knowing what I know about human design, I was really excited when like his eggs, like right when his whole body exited, I like marked down the time. Like I just wanted to know the exact time. Now, not everyone knows their exact time, and so in that case, you could put in different times to see if the chart changes at all. Sometimes it does change, sometimes it doesn't. So you're a little bit more fortunate.
There's
But I
different aspects. So like the broader things probably won't change within like a few minutes or,
Yeah.
But there's other details where it is changeable by a few minutes. So
your channels and things like that, possibly,
yeah, or
right?
even
yeah, or
like
definition in the
Your
center.
definition. So
yeah.
I do find it interesting because there are traditions, and like what I'm really into with Thinking in Destiny, he says that your real actual, he calls it a breath form, but doesn't come into you until you take that first breath.
I was gonna
So
say different thoughts on that even in human design of I know
mhm,
certain teachers who say that it's once your head is out because we have certain crystals within us. And so it's sort of like that's where the neutrinos start coming through the body. And so that's what determines. But then I've also heard a different thing where it's your first breath.
mhm.
The first breath is actually when like that time happens. Uh,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess just to continue, the main elements of human design, you have type, which there are 4 types. People say 5 types because manifesting generators are a hybrid of generators and manifestors. We get into profile, and the profile comes from, there's 12 total profiles in human design, and they're 2 numbers. It's one number followed by a slash and another number. And those numbers are either 1 through 6, and those come from the lines of the hexagram of the I Ching. So 1 3, 1 4, 2 4, 2 5, etc. You have your strategy that goes along with type. You have your inner authority, which I think is a huge piece as well to human design, which is your decision-making process. You have definition, which is like the layout of your chart in terms of how your defined centers are. So if all your defined centers are connected by channels, your single definition. If you have 2 that are connected by channel and then there's no other connection to the other 2, you'd be split definitions. So those mean different things as well. Your incarnation cross is something that we brought up earlier, which is your unique life theme. So there's different areas you can go into. So like we can talk about like just a summary of the different types and what they are if you want.
You have your not self theme as well.
Yeah, you have not. Yeah, you have your signature and not self theme. So the signature is that quality, that emotional state that's present when you're living in alignment with your design, and then the not self theme would be when you're not living in alignment with your design. Perhaps you're saying yes to things that aren't correct for you. You're saying no to things that maybe are right for you, and they're different depending on each type as well.
What's interesting about the type idea? It reminds me of archetypes, right? And how I think to have a proper, we all are here to have an individuated experience, but there's no denial that this is a collective experience as well. We live in a collective consciousness environment, this reality. And I think there is something kind of genius around having these different types to work together to create a proper experience as a collective, right? So I love how they balance each other out. We want to maybe touch on each of those types. And I believe Bear and I are both, I know I'm a manifesting generator, and I'm pretty sure when last time we did this, Bear is as well.
I
Yeah, I
just
think
happen to have done my chart online here. Manifesting generator.
you're 5-1 if I remember correctly.
Correct.
Yeah,
Excellent
same.
memory.
Ooh, my wife's a 5-1 as well,
Ooh.
Yeah,
but
as am
but a
I. As am
projector.
I. As am I. I'm a
We'll
5-1.
get
I'm a
into profiles
generator.
because I love.
Yeah, we'll
I
get.
think
Yeah.
Yeah.
type profile are like two of the big ones, right? So, do you want to start off with type? Would it be cool to like break down one of our charts as an example, or
I mean, we did that a little bit last time. We
Yeah,
could
we
we
did.
could we could do
Okay.
that maybe later on, but I think
Okay,
for
cool.
our purposes here, let's just give like a general outline
Awesome.
of the different types, like what they're here for, strategy, and then we'll kind of go from there. Sophie, does that work for you?
Totally.
Well, just breaking down the types, let's start with generators. So generators make up around 37% of the population. Manifesting generators make up around 33% of the population. Like, I don't know where they get these numbers from, but Sophie and I have led workshops. Like, we did one at Confluence recently that had 100 people around, maybe in the room estimated, and we had everyone sit according to their type, and these percentages were pretty close at matching up, which was pretty wild to see as well. But ultimately, like generators and manifesting generators, each type has its own aura type. Okay, that's this like kind of energy, I guess, field, you can say. And generators and manifesting generators have an open and enveloping aura. We bring life to us. We attract life to us. But ultimately, generators and MGs, it's all about having like deep fulfillment and satisfaction about doing the work that you love in that regards. Now, if we move on to projectors, which Sophie is, I'll just give an outline of, she can talk about being a projector, but I'll give an outline. They make up around 20% of the population. And projectors are all about wanting to feel successful and being recognized and invited to bring their gifts into the world. So I don't know if you want to talk more about that.
My wife and my oldest son are both projectors.
Yeah. Well, and I was just going to say with the generator, I mean, as you just said, like each type kind of has its like a genius that it can bring to the collective or into the field. And for generators and manifesting generators, it's like you guys are like the builders, creators. It's sort of like this like really creative energy because you guys are the ones who have this sacral center defined. So the red square, different systems use different colors. Which can get complicated, but it's the sacral center. And so just think of the sacral center in like the chakra system. It's like, it's the generative, it's the sexuality, it's the creating life force. And so the generators, it's like, I think of you guys as like, you guys are literally the sun on the planet. Like you guys make everything happen. And
So what you're saying is that we're the coolest.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are the majority of the population, right? So you guys are kind of
70% total.
So much of the field of realm, whatever this is, like of humanity on this planet. And so when he was talking about like the satisfaction, you guys need to do what lights you up, do what drives you, do what makes your body like want to move and want to do the thing. It's like when you guys are doing that, the rest of the population actually really thrives off of that because we're sort of pulling in that energy. Like the rest of us kind of need your guys' sacral energy in a certain way. And so it's kind of like, the not self theme is frustration for the generator types and manifesting generators. And so if we look around, I would say the vast majority of the population is really frustrated. They're not doing what they want to be doing. They're not creating what they want to be creating. They're not generating the things that they want in their life. They're being conditioned into saying yes to things that they don't want to do or no to things that they actually do want to do. And so the rest of us are kind of getting like pulled, that we're feeling more of that frustration through our own systems. So my sort of like headline whenever I'm talking to generators and anybody who's listening to this, like the likelihood of being a generator is high just because it's the highest percentage of the population, is like please do what you want to do. Like, you light yourself up, you get satisfied, you feel that like juiciness within your system. And I really think that's what is going to like change the whole trajectory with society, is like you guys doing that. So like the rest of us or whatever, the more we can kind of like, generator, what do you want to do? Like, do you really want to do this? Do you not want to do this? Like, what do you want to put your energy into? Like, do those things, because the rest of us really, really thrive off of generators feeling that satisfaction. And it's not a lot of the mindset that when I talk to people around this, it's like, oh, well, I do my job and then I'm not sure what else to do to feel satisfied. And it's like, oh, no. As a generator, like, your job should be your satisfaction. It's not the hobbies that you do that give you the satisfaction. Your like life force is being put into whatever career, work, whatever you're doing. And it doesn't have to be like the monetary thing, but it's like, what is bringing that satisfaction from the majority of the time you're in your life? Not the side thing that I do this job so that I can do this thing. Like, that's going to have a higher level of frustration within your life. And I also say with these themes, like, think about them as percentages. Every generator is going to have some level of frustration and some level of satisfaction. What we want to be looking at is like the percentages, like which way is the scale tipping? And it might be daily, it's shifting for you, but just for you to kind of be able to feel into that, like, oh, I have a little bit of a higher percentage of frustration. What was I doing? Or what did I do? What did I say yes to? What did I say no to? What were my decision-making process? Who was I around? Or, ooh, I had a lot more satisfaction. Okay, let me like I tell people, the person I learned it from, and so now I've taken that from her, like a satisfaction journal for generators. Like, gratitude journals are great, but also like if you're a generator type, like a satisfaction journal of like what felt really satisfying for you. What did you feel really like excited about that you created and you made happen? Anyway, that's my list.
I want to jump in there real quickly. I want to jump in. When she's saying generators in this context, she's talking about generators and manifesting generators together. Because in the original book, like, they only have 4 types. Like in Ra's book, it's just generators. Now there's obviously a shift. I want to add one more thing too, because this relates. You know, Ra talks about the Oracle of Delphi, and he says that was written for generators and manifestors. Know thyself, because each type, he goes, manifestors truly are here to know their impact on the other. Projectors are here to know and make sense of the other. Reflectors are here to know their environment. But generators, manifesting generators, they're here to truly know themselves. But how? And they do it through response. So the strategy of the generator and the manifesting generator is to wait to respond. So we have this sacral of the things that we're drawn to. So it's like, to both of you right now, I could pick up an apple and I could pick up an orange, and you're like, to the orange. Or maybe you're to the apple. I could pick up 2 books and you're like, to that. And so as you go through life, it's like, what is that sacral energy, that response leading you towards? And are you honoring that? Or are you going, well, I really want to do that, but my mom says I should do this, and society says I can't do that? And it's like, it's kind of very simple to be a generator, except it's gotten complicated by so much conditioning. It's really like, what lights me up? What am I drawn to? The problem is, many people have been disconnected from this innate somatic intelligence or their inner authority to some degree, or that sacral, because they've been traumatized, or their mind has been super distorted. And so they're not listening to this deep wisdom within. And so it becomes like a mind fuck. So part of human design is to decondition away from the ways you've been mind fucked, to really tune into this deep wisdom of the body, this your own personal intuition to guide you.
Yeah, I was going to say, as a generator, it's really important of who you have around you. Choose your friends wisely. Go ahead, Bear.
Well, just a comment about how this might translate physiologically in my practice. I saw a tremendous amount of cancer patients, cancer terrain, I'll call it. And I found a high degree of commonality with those folks with the element of thwarted creativity. And if you think about creativity, just replace that word with generation. So if that is thwarted, then that could biologically, be distorted into the body just holographically growing things, generating in inappropriate ways, because on another fundamental level, our creative desires are being, stymied. And so it comes out in aberrant ways, including in your physiology. So I kind of connected that dot a long time ago, and it seems to be, at least in my experience, it seemed to be kind of a common thread. Any comment about what you're talking about and how that creates maybe our physical ailments as well?
Oh, well, yeah, I definitely think that like our perception of self and how we live our
Mhm.
life and whether or not we're honoring ourselves is gonna lead to
Mhm.
manifestations in the physical. So I'd be curious to really dive into, the types of cancers specifically and get
Yeah.
more into their story and how they relate to themselves or things that they've gone through in life to even get more specific. But I totally agree with that. Like if that energy isn't moving outwards, like what can that do to you?
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like it's following a natural flow.
Yeah, I have a lot of ideas about all the specifics, as you mentioned, just because I saw thousands of people over a lot of years. And, whether my observations so hold true across everybody, I don't know, but it sure seemed to be consistent.
Yeah.
It would be cool to
Um,
apply human design to that, right? And finding out those people's charts and seeing if they're not honoring what their design is, and then, causing that. Like, it's cool stuff. Go ahead, Sophie. You're gonna say
what's
something.
even, I mean, one of the things, so for projectors, as Yerasimos was saying, is like our aura is focused and penetrating. And so our role sort of as projectors in society is guiding. And so for us as projectors, it's like I feel really deeply into the other. Like I penetrate your guys' sacral center, feel
Oh.
the body, and then I can kind of help guide the energy within your guys' system, because I, as a projector, I don't have that sacral center defined. The sacral center, I like to think of it as like the Energizer Bunny. Like it's just this like energy that goes and goes and goes and goes and goes, and it's very consistent. And yet it's like these, when it's frustrated or when it's being conditioned in certain ways, that generator energy, like you guys might just be like running into a brick wall, like over and
Mm-hmm.
over and over again. And like, why am I not going? Why am I not going? And then me as the projector can kind of feel into the system and be like, oh, you just need to turn to the right, or you just need to turn to the left, and then it's an open field for you to be moving through. So that's sort of like the role of the projector, is to be more of that guiding force, because we don't have that sacral. We need to be really efficient I need to be really efficient with my energy. So it's like being really aware of like, where am I spending it? Why am I spending it there? What do I want to do? What do I not want to be doing? The main thing for projectors is the success and recognition is the high self theme, and then the low self-esteem is bitterness. So it's like, oh, I'm not being seen, I'm not being recognized, blah, 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 blah. No one's asking me to guide. But I will say a big thing for projectors to be aware of is that we, as our aura is so focused and penetrating, it needs to be invited in. So it's like that law with like energy. Like I'm not just going to like, it sounds so weird, but it's like I'm not just going to penetrate somebody. But when
Hmm.
you don't know you're a projector, you're kind of going around doing that. And you're just kind of feeling really deeply into
Keep in
everyone
mind,
around you.
we have to keep this clean for YouTube.
Sorry.
And I'm trying really
I was
hard.
thinking that's good for Yerasimos' married life, probably.
But even then, it's like he still needs to invite me in to like do that, right? Because otherwise, it's like I'm violating his
Yeah.
being if I'm just going around doing that. And it's a waste of my energy. So all of these aura systems are really, I think of them as like protections in terms of like this theme of I need to wait to be invited, is like it's so that I'm not wasting my energy on people who don't want my guidance.
Yeah, that's
So
the
they're not
thing.
just going around, going up to people in this, random person in the supermarket and being like, I just got this hit that you shouldn't be doing X, Y, and Z. Like, no one's going to listen to that. People are going to be like, what the
Yeah.
fuck is this crazy
Can,
person?
Can that be a tough thing when you've got a generator with a projector, because the projector's waiting to be invited, and the generator is waiting for is to respond to something,
Yes.
right?
So it can be an interesting dynamic, and know that like for both of these, like the projector is invitations given and received. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not just sitting around doing nothing, being like, oh, I really hope somebody invites me and recognizes me today. That's where the bitterness comes in. Versus like me just doing my thing, getting into my studies, really focusing on what I want to be doing. And then people are going to be like, oh, what are you doing? Oh, I want to invite you in to like give that information or give that gift. But for Yerasimos, it's like, same thing with the dynamic of he still has to invite me in to give that guidance. And then for me, one of the big dynamics, and for all projectors, is the big conditioning force. As we said, the main conditioning force is a generator energy on the planet. I am not a generator type, but I've been conditioned, and I'm constantly conditioned to act like a generator type. And so even when we were talking about these physical manifestations, a lot of projectors and even manifestors and definitely reflectors, we can tend to a little bit more of that adrenal fatigue, that full burnout within our systems, because we're trying to be generative. We're trying to keep up with this sacral center that we just naturally don't have. And so I sort of joke that now with my awareness, I can kind of be aware of like, okay, you know, I've been at Music and Sky for 4 days straight. I've been around a ton of generators. I'm tired as hell, but I'm just gonna pull on these generators around me to get me through the next day or so, you know? But then it's like I have to have a real commitment to myself of knowing this, knowing that I'm going beyond my natural energy system and go, okay, I'm gonna schedule in a day or 2 days of like no people. And I call them like my horizontal days. Like anything that I can do horizontal, I'm doing horizontal. If I'm doing emails or whatever, it's like just knowing my own energy system of like, okay, I overdid. I moved into generator territory. Now I need to like decondition from that. I need to empty out that center. I need to empty out my sacral of all the information I just pulled in so that I can come back into actually being my projector self. And so again, this is where that conditioning pieces come in. But
And
yeah,
you're
so
saying conditioning
I
like
want, I want, I,
societal conditioning, because everything's go, 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 and
well, okay,
create, you know,
yeah,
create all
it's
your own
it's
stuff yourself, and
yeah,
it's like
it's
be
what's
a go-getter.
praised, right? So the generator type energy of go, 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 and then the manifester is really praised as well in society because it's the go-getter, it's the make shit happen, it's the have things, you know, going on. And so the projector is kind of like, yeah, thanks.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
I want
you.
to add, I want to add something too, just to give more of a framework because we haven't talked about it. Like you have 9 centers in human design. Okay, so you know, starting from the top, we got the crown, then the ajna, then the throat, then the G center, the heart center, the solar plexus or emotional center, the sacral, the spleen, and the root. So depending on the makeup of your chart, like wherever you're defined, wherever in your chart is colored in. So for anyone watching this that's pulled up their human design chart and knows a little bit about human design, wherever you're colored in is what's fixed and reliable in you. But wherever you're white in your chart is, that's where you can receive conditioning and influence by environment, by others that have those colored in. So part of what Sophie's saying too is if like 70% of the population are generators, the non-energy types, they're taking in that conditioning. And so something also that I think is really practical for people to utilize or to look into is to see where maybe conditioning through these undefined centers, through these white centers on your chart, are distorting your thinking and your behavior. So for someone who has an undefined sacral, which would be anyone besides a generator or a manifesting generator, you know, and again, the sacral has to do with, you know, your energy, your sexuality, your, you know, responding to life. Each center has its own not self theme as well, you know, and you can go into and explore like different questions to ask yourself to see, hey, am I coming from a conditioning place? So for a non-energy type, like the not self theme that's presenting itself is like not knowing when enough is enough. Like you don't have the awareness to know when enough is enough because you're just continuing to ride that generator sacral energy. And so
That's
to
the
ask
not
yourself,
self-name of the sacral.
so yeah, so to ask yourself as a projector, like, hey, do I know when enough is enough? You know what I mean? And like each center has this about it, you know, whether it's the crown or it's called the head, you know, that can impact you in different ways where you're just thinking about things that don't matter because you're taking in mental pressure from other people in your life that may have that defined, you know. So learning about the conditioning elements of each center is another practical thing for people to get into, to go, okay, how can I apply this to my life? Because again, Sophie mentioned it earlier. Great, human design is complex. There's all these things. I pull up a chart. There's lines. But how do I make it practical, and how do I continue to experiment? And so strategy and authority are the two most important parts of human design that you can initiate right away. And it's something practical, something that you can hang your hat on, as opposed to, oh, I'm reading stuff and it's just telling me about certain general tendencies. Like as a generator, you're like, okay, wait to respond. Like, are there times in my life where I'm initiating, I'm not responding to, and response could be anything. You could respond to a bird chirping, to the leaves moving, to a phone call, to a text. It's just trusting that life is going to come to you. And for me personally, I remember, like, 10 years ago, someone was telling me how to like do my coaching and this and that. And I learned human design. I was like, you know what? Fuck this. I'm just chilling. And I'm going to just trust that the right people, the right situations, the right opportunities are going to come to me. Then each individual has the opportunity through their inner authority, depending on what it is, to make a choice. So then we get into like the differences in authority. There are about 7 main authorities.
I do find it interesting on the second. So you have the crown, and then you have, what's the second one?
The ajna, or the mind.
The mind, how generators don't have that lit up. So in generators being the majority of
They can.
society.
They can.
Oh, they can? I rarely see that.
Well, because only I think 20% of the population have the top 2 defined.
Okay. Yeah. And I've rarely ever see the crown ever defined. But that being said, I was just making the point, if the majority don't, then they're more apt to be, mind controlled a bit, right?
Yeah.
Well,
which is what we see everywhere in society, is mind control.
And the other thing I want to say, and Bear, I want to hear what you have to say, is back to what I said about conditioning, is a lot of people have an open mind, an open ajna. So the not self theme to that is like pretending to be certain, like this need to be certain and to convince everyone that you're certain. And I think we see it in our world, in the truth, freedom, conspiracy world. And I'd be so curious to observe, to look into some of these people's charts that they just want to beat you over the head with, like, I'm certain 100% I have the knowledge. And I'm just like, chill, bro.
So those are the folks that don't have that center colored in, is what you're saying.
Yeah, that don't have the mind colored in. Now, of course, the positives of that are you're able to take in information and learn lots of different things and be open.
Change your mind. It's more of a, like, open-minded and sort of more changeable, but it is the being in the sort of like the flow of that is understanding, like, oh, my mind might change. Like, this is what I believe right now. I'm still taking in information, and that might change or alter as I go, versus when you're in the not self theme, it's like, this is the truth, and the only truth, and there's no other alternative, there's no other ways. It's like a little
getting comfortable with saying I don't know with an open mind is very important. Just like, I don't know.
Is there significance to the colors on the chart for those centers? Like, I see green, blue,
not for the centers.
Pink.
Not for the centers. They don't change. It's just the difference between defined or not defined. Defined is colored.
People have asked me that before, and I've said no. I mean, maybe there is, but I don't think so.
The only colors that do make a difference is in your chart when you look at the little lines. If there's black, that's more conscious. That's going to be more of your personality side. And then if it's red, that's more unconscious. That's going to be more of the design side, more of like your body experience. And then when it's both, it actually shows up on both sides of your chart. So the lines, that color does make a difference in terms of what it correlates to, but for the centers, because there's certain softwares that use it, and they just use one color for all of like, it's either defined or it's not defined. They don't change the colors at all.
Okay, so you explained a little bit a consequence possibly of having the ajna center vacant. How about this going to the South Pole? what would be a possible or an example of somebody who had a vacant root chakra?
The root chakra. I have a completely open chakra. I mean,
Yeah, me
actually,
too.
that's
That's
another
why I'm
thing.
asking.
That's another thing too. Is even wait, are you saying you have it as well?
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
So do
I
I.
was
Yeah.
gonna, I was gonna stay anonymous, but what the heck?
No, I
Let's go
figured.
for it.
I figured I'd just jump in there with you and be like, yeah, I got that as well.
Make me feel better.
So yeah, I think for the root center, it has to do with like the root. This is where drive and stress comes from. It's where like we kind of use like physical adrenalized pressure there.
Mm.
And so for people that have that open, the not self theme for that is like feeling like you're always in a hurry to get things done to relieve yourself of the pressure. Like
Wow. Know
asking
that
yourself,
one.
what'd you
My
say?
wife would.
Yeah.
It sounds like you've had a conversation with my wife there.
Well, I mean, same here. I mean, I notice it too. Even sometimes, like feeling the need to like get back to someone right away, or cross that thing off my to-do list. It's like, oh, once I do it, oh, I've released some pressure. I've released some pressure. I've released some pressure. So it's just about bringing more awareness to things.
Can I ask you, just uncovering type 2 manifestors, because like my youngest son Mateo is a manifester, and he literally lives in his imagination. Like he'll spend hours by himself just playing like he's a soldier in World War I, all dressed up. He's still doing it. He's 11.
He has
And
the two line too, right?
yes, so
He's
he's
a
a
2/4.
2/4.
That's
So
part of it.
comes to him naturally, right? That's the idea. It's just
The
like
two's the hermit also. So the two lines are cool, just being in their own world, doing the things that they want to do, and they're meant to be called forward to kind of give these natural gifts that they have, to be seen and to go, oh hey, you come over here. But a lot of twos are totally fine. Like, yeah, cool. I'll just be in my own world.
Manifestors can have a little bit of that of like, because for
Very
manifestors, their
independent.
aura is fixed and repelling, which oftentimes a lot of people will hear that and be like, oh, that's really negative, blah, blah, blah. It's not, it's again, that protection. So the same for projectors needing to be invited. Manifestors, while it's very debatable, they're not technically non-energy types, even though they don't have the sacral defined. What makes them a manifestor is that they have an energy center that goes directly to their throat. And so the throat is the channel of manifestation. And so manifestors get these big bursts of energy. Like they'll get like a insight and inspiration. This thing I want to create, or I want to bring it forward. They'll get this burst of energy of like go into go mode of like da 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 da.
yeah.
But they're just the ones who are supposed to bring the idea forward, bring the concept forward. They're not the ones who are supposed to build it. They're the ones who have the energy to like initiate. So their theme is they initiate things. They're the only type who's really designed to do that. And so they bring this forward, they put it out into the world, and the fixed and repelling aura is basically like, get on board and help with this, or get out of my way. Yeah. Like it's not to be mean, but it's really just for their energy. They're creating something, bringing something new into the world. And it's like, I always think of it as kind of like, I'm doing this with my hands, but it's kind of like a boat, right? So it's like moving through the ocean. It's cutting through sort of like the riffraff. And it's like, either people are going to jump on and be like, yeah, I want to help, move this boat through, or they're going to jump ship and be like, I don't want to go that way.
Yeah, I think that's why I was asking about manifestors too as children, because traditional schooling doesn't always play so well into because
and they're not really designed to be parented. I know that's hard to hear as a parent, but it's like they're not really designed for that. They sort of come in with this like, I'm me and I'm doing my own thing. And if we kind of leave manifestors alone, their themes are peace and
the signature, yeah.
Their signatures are peace and anger. And so they really just want peace. They just want that peace within themselves, around in their environment. Again, with that boat, like their fixed and repelling aura is trying to like get rid of anybody who is going to disturb their peace. And that anger comes in of like somebody came in to try to say no. So I always joke with manifestors, especially for you as the parent, like saying no. The word no is generally way more triggering to manifestors than other types, because as I said, like they're sort of this big energy field and they're kind of moving in one direction. And when you say no, it's like trying to stop a boulder versus if, especially again, as a parent, if you can give a choice or a redirection, it's like the boulder can keep moving and it's just shifting a little bit instead of like coming to a complete halt.
Yeah, like
So
asking questions instead of no, saying, well, is this really what you want? Or what about this? What about that?
yeah.
Yeah.
Would you be open to trying this thing versus that thing? Or would you, here are two options. Instead of saying like, no, you can't do that, be like, you can do this or you can do that.
Man, I wish I knew human design about 8 years ago. But it's okay.
Yeah,
I mean,
I hear you,
intuitively,
man.
we got through it. It's fine, but it
But
makes so
both
much
my
sense.
parents, yeah, both my
Well,
parents are manifestors, so I grew
yeah.
up with two manifestor parents. The
So-
other thing I want to, I
My
just want to
mom
highlight
is a
that.
manifester,
Yeah.
so I joke with her, I'll find any way to not use the word no. Like
Yeah,
I'll
so-
like say other, like I'll use an entire sentence instead of just writing no, because I'm like, that's just gonna like
Yeah.
create that anger storm versus like, let's go towards peace. Like, this is why this won't work.
So
The other thing,
I was just going to ask too, real quick, is Bear and I are manifesting generators, so we have a
Yeah.
bit of that in us as well. Is that right? Or
you do, you're a hybrid, but you follow the foundational principles of being a generator, which is waiting to respond. Life comes to you, you respond, and when something really is lighting you up and you're saying yes to it, then it's kind of, you go into manifestor mode where it's important for you to like follow the strategy of the manifestor, which I'll add is to inform. Because when you're as the manifestor, because you're kind of like this tornado of energy, you want to inform. Sure, you're going to do what you're going to do, but by informing, you lessen resistance by the people in your life, and then you have more opportunities to just peacefully do what you're going to do.
It's that energy of get on board or get out of my way. If you're not telling them which way you're going or what you're going to be doing, or like I literally tell people like, inform your family that you're getting up to go to the bathroom. Inform your family that you're going to go get a drink of water.
Yeah.
Like inform people about like sort of every move you're going to make, because that aura field is so intense for others that's like they're going to be impacted anyway. But it's a lot more peaceful within the system if you inform what you're about to do, rather than like you just doing it and the people around you kind of being like, "Whoa, what just happened?"
Yeah.
Like,
and this is for manifestors. This is for manifestors. But when you're an MG and you've kind of have that hybrid nature and you get into that mode where like, okay, you've responded to something, you're that, and you have the ability to initiate and catalyze, informing people is going to help lessen some of the resistance along the way, if that makes sense to you.
Can you
reflectors, just because
I was just going to ask, I was going to say, can you elaborate on the reflectors a little bit?
I think we had 3 reflectors at Last Music in Sky, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, they're one to, like, manifestors, we didn't say this, they're like, I think 8 to 9% of the population. Projectors are 20% of the population. Reflectors are 1 to 2% of the population. So they have their whole chart is white, meaning there's no centers defined. They have gates activated, but there's no centers defined. So they're here to really, like I said earlier, they're here to know their environment. So they're always taking things in from the people and they're reflecting it back. So their core purpose in life is to like reflect things back to the community. And their strategy is to wait a lunar cycle. So they follow the moon. And so for any major decisions, they're meant to wait 29 days. So
and they're sampling, so they're always feeling into what they're around and sort of like I always think of them as like they're kind of like looking at a charcuterie board and they're kind of like tasting and making like what they want from it, and sort of very changeable within their systems because of that, because they're so impacted by the environment. And it's really looking at sort of like the health of reflectors is really the mirror to society of like, how are we doing? Like, just think of like the names, like reflectors, they are reflecting what is happening in the larger scale.
So could you talk a little bit more about how a reflector would, notice the rest of the collective as far as what they are reflecting? Is it just through their state of health or experiences they have that we can all look and learn from, or are they getting at in a more demonstrable way somehow to play their role?
Well, first of all, I want to say is like if we're talking about a healthy reflector that has
Mhm.
gone through the process of deconditioning, because again, they have all centers undefined, so there's the most potential for conditioning. And also
Mhm.
something I didn't say before is the open centers is where we really have great capacity for wisdom, learning over time what doesn't belong to us, what isn't us. So reflectors have the capacity to be the most wise, but again, they have to be in the right environment. So they're going to take when I say reflect back to the society, it could be to their community, and of course their profile and other factors of their chart are going to determine how they go about that. But they're taking in through a whole 28-day cycle, they're kind of sampling, and during the 28 days they actually may be like, oh, I can feel what it's like to be a manifester, I can feel what it's like to be a generator, because they have that capacity based on how the transits are interacting with their own personal chart.
Could their
Makes sense.
nature leave them more vulnerable, say, to programming of all types?
It can, and I've also heard that it can flip the other way in terms
Mhm.
that they can actually be the most sort of fixed, or the word like stubborn within their systems, because it can feel so fluid and overwhelming in a
Mhm.
society that really phrases like knowing oneself and having opinions and having sort of like a stake in the ground. It's like reflectors can kind of get like hyper into that of like, no, this is who I am and this is da, 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 and so completely into the not self that they get really like hardened within themselves,
Disappointed.
like this thing. Whereas yeah, they are designed to be a little bit more fluid within their systems and not really identify super strongly with any one thing or one way of being. But yeah, it can flip the other way into like, but I've also heard manifestors and reflectors are actually more similar. Whereas even like in my head, I initially thought reflectors and projectors would be more similar, but because of that fixity within them, sometimes that can come across much more as like the manifestor. Um,
I would imagine that a lot of the great sages and ascetics types of philosophers might have been reflectors.
Probably.
Yeah,
Yeah.
who
A
knows?
lot of like the main CEOs are manifestors.
Yeah.
Is
Well, I
it
think I think like Stalin and Hitler were both manifestors,
Yeah, they
as
were.
well.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
is
It's
it
it's
uncommon to have somebody with no centers vacant?
Yeah, it's 1% of the reflectors are 1 to 2% of the population.
And what would you say about them?
That's what we're talking about. We're talking about them right now. The reflectors are the ones that have. Are you saying no? Are you saying no centers vacant? So all
Yes.
defined?
Yeah.
Well, and if it's
Uh,
all defined, they're going to be a
they're gonna be a
generator or manifesting
generator.
generator, depending on how the channels are set up.
Hmm.
They tend to be the most fixed. Like the more centers you have defined, you tend to be a little bit more fixed and solid
Hmm.
with like who you are, and you can be a little bit more stubborn. People
Hmm.
that have less centers defined, meaning colored in, they tend to
Hmm.
be a little bit more open. And again, it's
Okay.
not good or bad. It just has to do with your specific uh, nature. And there's pros and cons to all of it,
Yeah.
depending on how it manifests and depending on how you choose to live your life.
so funny because my youngest has almost all of his lit up and he is so stubborn.
Yeah.
Man. And he's
And he's the
manifesting.
manifester.
Yeah. Mateo. You guys know Mateo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Two
Um,
four manifester.
Yeah. And man,
Yeah.
is anger on the point. So we go into these 2 4. Want to just quickly go through profiles real quick? I know we're gonna have
Well,
to do another show and go just
how
right into stuff because
well,
it's
how about
just
this?
so
Why don't we
deep.
just
But
go through each? Why don't we go through each line and what kind of each line represents in a very kind of basic, summarizing
yeah,
way? So, and anyone who's listening could like put them together and go, okay, well, these two elements are aspects of me, as opposed to like, let's go through all 12 and what they
yeah,
mean.
yeah, and explain
So,
And
what the
and
before, the
even
slash, and after internal
yeah,
out.
I was just gonna say the because Yerasimos will go over it, but
yeah,
just
you start off with the
fundamentally.
conscious, unconscious.
Yeah, fundamentally, so what you're looking at is your profile is the two numbers, and it's going to have one number and the slash and then the second number. And those come from when you're looking at, a body graph, your chart, those come from on the left side, it's going to be red. you're going to have a number and then a period and then another number. That number after the period is going to be anything between 1 and 6.
Would
So
it be helpful to do a share screen when you're doing this?
sure. Do you want me to, I can, well, I guess I'll share mine because I have it up. All right. So if you can see this. So this right here, this number, so my unconscious sun is 16.5. The 5 makes the unconscious part of my profile, which is the second number. The 3, so I'm 40.3 in my conscious sun. So that's going to be on the right side, the black numbers. So that number is going to be your conscious part of your profile. So I'm a 3-5 when you look at my thing.
Yeah.
And so you're going to have the first one. The first number is going to be, as I said, the conscious part, more personality design. And so it's going to be the part that you probably resonate with more. It's the one that's going to be a little bit more forward. Then you're going to have the slash. The second number for me is the 5. It's a little bit more unconscious. It's going to be playing out in the background a little bit more for me. It's also how I describe it sometimes is like the conscious side is going to be probably more how you would define yourself or how you would describe yourself, whereas the unconscious is probably how others would describe you.
Yeah, the design line is more of the body too, like more but body genetic elements as well. That's what I've heard.
And you can look down, so all of these numbers on the left side, when you're looking at the body graph with the numbers, the number on the left side of the period is going to correlate with a gate within the chart, and those correlate with the I Ching. And then this period, and then the number on the right is going to be sort of like a flavoring of that personality trait, a flavoring that happens with that gate. And they're all the 1 through 6. So these are going to apply when we go through the 1 through 6 profile numbers. You can kind of then feel the flavoring that's going to transfer over.
I want to add something really quickly. Well, first of all, when we're looking at this, we'll look at this for a little bit and then we'll take it off and go back to us. But those columns, the red and the black, like those are all different like planetary placements. And so each planet, as people know from astrology, relate to different things. And so that gate is going to express how that quality that relates to the planet kind of shows up in your life. Also, the top 4, the 2 on the left and the 2 on the right, you'll see that those 4 gates are the ones that make up the 4 gates of your incarnation cross. So it's the placement of the sun and earth, personality and design that make up your incarnation cross. But if we go into profile, like each line, and I'll just keep it really basic because I also want to do a little quick summary of like the main the main authorities. If we go in line 1 first, again, these correlate with the lines from the hexagram of the I Ching. The 1 is the investigator. Okay, so just think about what the investigator is. The investigator is all about building a secure foundation, wanting to get to the bottom of things, wanting to feel like it has the practical skills and the knowledge to be able to then bring that forth in the world. There's an inherent insecurity in the 1 line, and that's why we want to keep learning and keep going down these rabbit holes and keep building and learning this knowledge so we can feel secure. So then we can when people call on us, we feel like we got the goods and that we can, share our knowledge and our wisdom. Now, the 2 line we talked about a little bit, that's the hermit. And so, it's all about natural talents. It's the hermit obviously prefers more solitude. Like I said before, it's drawn out from others. But these are people that just have this natural ability, and the 2 line wants to kind of do its own thing and march to the beat of its own drum.
Has a natural ability to just do things without even having any instruction, just like
they kind of have these innate gifts, and very often they don't even like know they have them, but through other people seeing it in them, they go like, yo, you're pretty badass at this, or you have this like, why don't you come forward and help us out? And
and it can also sometimes be like it can be a little like, oh, but I didn't train in that, or I didn't go to school for that, or I didn't blah, 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 blah. And so it can be kind of discounting. For them, it's like they're just really good at it. Like they don't have to do the extra stuff. It's just something they're really good at. And so they need sort of like that person to kind of be like, hey, that's unusual, or that's a gift, or that's a talent. They may not recognize it as a gift or talent because it just comes so naturally. And so they just think everybody has that. Like that's just a normal, natural thing. And so it really takes sort of like the other people around to be like, no, that's needed, or that's really cool, or like, can you provide insight on that for everyone else?
Yeah, and the one line too, I want to go back to that. Like, sometimes we could feel like we don't know enough. I need to know everything. I don't know enough. I don't know enough. I need to keep learning, which can obviously come back to bite you in the ass sometimes because you don't feel like you're ever ready. The 3 line, which is Sophie has it in her profile because she's a 3-5, and that's called the martyr. And she already talked about this. The 3 is all about like experimenting. It's a process of discovery. It's all about learning through trial and error. One thing I say too, for anyone that has a child that has a 3 line, like really celebrate their mistakes and their failures, because obviously that's a universal. I think for everyone, we learn from our mistakes and our failures, but primarily, especially for anyone that has a 3 line in their profile, 3-5, 1-3, 3-6, 6-3, like celebrate that. Like, oh my God, wow, you just learned something new. Cool. You discovered what didn't work. It's
And
about
even
like
asking like, what did you learn from that, versus like, oh, why'd you do that, or don't do that again. It's sort of like really focusing on the lesson, because again, the conditioning is like mistakes are bad. Like, it's bad to make mistakes, blah, 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 blah. And so a lot of 3s, the sort of downside can be a lot of perfectionism. Like, oh, I can't try anything. I can't do anything because I'll make a mistake. And a lot of 3s got really reprimanded for that growing up. And understanding sort of like the psychological shift of like, for 3s, if we're not making mistakes, we're actually out of alignment. Like, if we're not trying things, we're actually out of alignment. And so really making that flip within the 3 energy.
yeah. Moving on to the 4, Mike, I think you have a 4, and maybe one of your sons has a 4 in your profile. Is that correct? 1-4?
Actually, we have a lot of 4s. Yeah, both my sons have 4s, and I'm a 1-4.
Gotcha. So the 4 is known as the opportunist, and it's not like in the way that like negative connotative. It's all about networking. It's all about relationships. Relationships are at the foundation of what you do. Building relationships, connecting with others, building networks, valuing friendship, and that a lot of your opportunities are going to come not from strangers, but from within your network. 5 lines are more built to kind of like universalize and kind of share things with like the world and strangers, but 4 lines are all about building those networks.
Yeah, like, so 1-4, I'm a 1-4, so the internal of 1, so it's trying to seek and find the next truth and new information constantly, and then a 4 being in my community, connecting.
Yeah.
I mean, music and
It's
sky.
obvious.
Like,
anyone that knows you and like can learn about the 1 and the 4, like, oh yeah, cool, it makes sense, because it's kind of like the profile is like the costume of your purpose, like that the role we play in our life. Bear and I are 5-1, Sophie's a 3-5, you're a 1-4. Anyone else listening, check that out and see how these relate to you when we talk about the summaries.
Yeah, so the 5, going to the 5.
The 5 is known as the heretic. So what is the heretic? The heretic is the one that just goes outside the box, the one that is willing to challenge societal norms in a lot of ways. The 5 line also is the most projected upon of all the lines, that people look to us like automatically, like we have the problem, like we have the solution to all the problems, and we can sometimes be looked upon as like saviors. Now there's a natural leadership quality there. The 5 line also wants to be able to bring practical solutions to people as well, because we're highly projected upon. If we don't bring the goods, let's say someone's like, Bear, oh my God, you're amazing, I heard you're like this amazing healer. But let's say you're not who you are, but you're someone who maybe read 1 book, but then someone projected on you that you have all the answers, and you're totally buying into that projection field. Oh yeah, I fucking know everything. But then you don't bring the goods. That's where like your reputation can get hit. You can be rejected, and you can be burned at the stake, like the heretics of the past. So it's really important to really know that, like, what are you saying yes to or not? Because some people can buy into the positive projection field and be like, yes, I am amazing. Everyone thinks I'm incredible and awesome and brilliant. And then you just kind of just, say yes to everything, but like you don't have the goods. So I think it's important too for the 5 line to cut the projection field, and something that I've done in my life when I've worked with clients, whether it's body work, sometimes it feels like this like unnatural, like, oh my God, thank you so much. And I just go, I receive that. Thank you. And I'm a human being and I fuck up too. like, because I don't want the things to be put on me that I have the solutions and the answers and I'm the savior to your problems.
That's why I left medicine and became a farmer.
There you go.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's the thing with the five is like it can get looped into that field of like the five wants to be the savior. It wants to be able to like help everybody with everything. And so for the five, it is just that understanding of like what is my strength? What are my weaknesses? What can I deliver? What can I not deliver? And then being really clear on like what am I agreeing to?
Yeah.
Instead of just like, yeah, I'll help with that, I'll help with that, I'll help with that, I'll help with that. It's like really understanding like, okay, what is my wheelhouse?
Yeah.
Or
Fives
where
are
do I
natural. Yeah. Sorry. Fives
I
are
was just
natural problem solvers and leaders.
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, I was gonna say too. What would be the difference? I'm still trying to. It's interesting. My wife's a 5-1 actually, and she'll admit too, as an RN, that she gets off on actually the interplay of her constantly helping people to the point where it's destructive to her own energy
Yeah.
because
You can
she
get into
can't.
the savior complex.
Yeah,
I'm here to
exactly.
save the day.
Yep. Yeah. But that being said, what's the difference between like a 5-1 and a 1-5 as you flip those?
There isn't a 1-5.
Or okay, so
There's a
what I'm
4-1
saying.
and a 1-4.
Okay, so
do?
yeah, like for instance, a 1-4 and a 4-1, right?
Well, it would be what Sophie talked about before on how the first line relates to the personality line. It's a little bit more conscious in you. And then the second line is the design line that relates more to the body and is more unconscious. So how those profiles show up will relate to that. I don't know if Sophie, you want to kind of elaborate.
Could it be also like internal versus outside? So
Yeah,
like,
well, it's how I describe. So like me being a 3-5, like I would describe myself as the mistake maker. Like I'm always trying and failing and making mistakes and like stubbing my toe and doing all that stuff. But other people might see me a little bit more as the 5 and like have that projection field, or you have information, you know things. And so it's more important, I would say more important sometimes to be aware of, especially if the 5 is your second, of that positive projection field, because it might be coming and if you're not aware of it, you're just kind of like entangled in it. So the second number for me, I usually like use that as be really aware that this is how others are probably perceiving you more than you're perceiving yourself. So the fact that you're sorry, that's our 1-4. The 1, you're probably going to I feel like you'd be really clear on like, yeah, of course I'm the investigator. Like I love going down all these rabbit holes. I love getting all of the information. Now, as we develop, we also, develop more of our awareness of the unconscious side. But maybe when you were growing up, you didn't know that 4 was playing out within your system in terms of like needing the connections and the network and the creating the community for yourself. And so that's where, it's just becoming more aware of.
and also that projection of that, like on the 4, like I do love being a socialite, but oftentimes I get like crazy anxiety in certain groups of people.
Well, yeah. Well, you also, as a 4 line too, like you need to have that time to kind of rest and regroup and recharge as well. It's important. As if you're just going, it can be, it could lead to burnout.
So
that's
what's
also really important to know for the hermit, because even though it's the hermit of like going in, it's really each hermit has its own sort of like percentage out, percentage in, or like how much out, how much in. But oftentimes with the 2, the sort of the negative part, I guess, or the part you can get stuck in is like, oh, I just feel really good just in and I don't want to go out. Or they get conditioned into, especially the 2-4, because the 4 is more out of like, oh, I'm supposed to be out, I'm supposed to be doing this. And so they don't have the give and take. They don't have the in and out. They sort of get stuck in one or the other for sort of like too long. And so it's good to just sort of start monitoring that within yourself of like, where's my energy level? Where am I sort of like too much in one part of this? Even in terms of, as you're saying, the first number, second number, like it's not like one is greater than the other. It's just which, like understanding that both are at play within your system.
Yeah. Shall we finish up with this? Oh, sorry. I was going to finish up with the 6, but Bear, you come in.
No, you go.
Well, just the 6 line, just to end up end off the 6 profile lines. The 6 is known as the role model. But what's really distinct with the 6 is that it works in 3 phases, 3 life stages, I guess you can say. So for the first 30 years around, a 6 line actually behaves more like a 3. So they're living that 3 life. It could be a little bit more chaotic. They're having tons of subjective experiences. They're bumping into life. They're bumping into relationships. Again, that trial and error process, what works, what doesn't work. Then what happens is there's this period between 30 and 50. They call it going onto the roof, where they withdraw a bit from life. They lick their wounds. They're taking all those subjective experiences and starting to turn them more into more objective wisdom within themselves. Then once they get to the 3rd stage of their life, age 50, it's when they can kind of fully kind of take on the role of the role model and share their wisdom and give advice and guide others. So the 6 line works in the 3 phases. And during that middle phase is also a time where people kind of just like settle down, get more into their career, start a family, etc. It doesn't mean if you're a 6 line, like you can't be a role model or offer guidance until 50. It just means that like you're fully going to step into and kind of, wear the crown of the role model as you kind of mature and go through these phases.
Beautiful. And then
you
we
have
you gotta go. All these numbers on the chart, right? These are all like individual specific gifts.
They're gates. They correlate with the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching, and they're different kind of like roles, different traits.
You could consider them gifts or consider them special that you've come in with, right? Like skills.
Yeah, again, where you're defined. So if it's colored in, like there's a line coming off of it, that's where you have that, you consistently have access to that trait or that personality, manifestation within you.
So any other quick questions? Should we like do a very quick rundown of like the different authorities?
Yeah, I think we can end with that.
I have a whole bunch of questions, but they'll have to wait for another time. Let's do what you were going to do there, Yerasimos.
Well, just because for anyone that's listening that has their chart in front of them, these are kind of like the main keywords. So and again, anyone listening, like you can throw these things on a search engine, continue the process of learning if this intrigues you. But yeah, so there's I wouldn't say they work in a hierarchy, but there are definitely ones that more people have. So the main authority, like the most people have, is the emotional authority, which is what I have, which is what Sophie has. So if you have the solar plexus defined in your chart, which is the bottom right triangle, that would mean that you have an emotional authority. And what that means is anyone that has that centered colored in is always moving through emotional waves. Now, the type of wave is going to be dependent on like the channels that activate the emotional center. But because you're moving through emotional waves, anyone that has an emotional authority, technically, especially for big decisions, like you don't have truth in the now. It's very important for you to wait out your emotional wave and to get the different data points that you're getting as you're on this wave, and then come to a place of emotional clarity. Now, you're probably not going to get to 100% emotional clarity, maybe 80, 90%, but you give yourself time to feel into yourself as you're contemplating, like, maybe a decision. And then you kind of tune into like, this feels right. Now, again, an emotional projector is going to be a little different than an emotional generator because we still have that sacral, we still have that gut, that yes or no. But a generator with the emotional center defined, they may get this like this like yes to something, but give yourself some time, allow yourself to move through the wave. You don't want to make a decision when you're at the height of a wave, like super freaking fired up and excited, or if you're at the down of the wave and down and depressed, be like, hey, let me give myself some time and let me get to maybe a more neutral balanced point before I say yes or no. So 51% of the population has an emotional authority.
Yeah.
Did you want to add something, babe?
That's what I was going to add, that it's like 50-50-ish.
Yeah. And then the other, 49% are split up amongst the next most, I guess, popular, you would say, is the sacral. So again, all the other generators and manifesting generators that aren't emotional authorities are going to be a pure sacral. So they have that activated, defined sacral center. And so that's that kind of that gut knowing in the now, following that flow moment to moment. Or maybe, I don't really know, but it's usually that just yes or no, like this lights me up. I'm drawn to this or not. But many people don't listen to these. They don't honor the authority of their body, this wisdom that's coming in. They have so much conditioning that is distorting their thinking. So part of the work is, sure, you can learn human design, but there might be other work that you need to do. Like if you're just living at a trauma responses, or if you're in fight, flight, freeze, like there might be other work that you have to do in order to be able to tune in to this kind of deeper level of knowing. So yeah, it's immediate gut responses to the sacral. Then the splenic has to do with the spleen center. We didn't talk about that. That's the bottom left triangle in your chart. That has to do, like we share that with animals. It's our intuition and our instinct. Fight or flight lives there. And so people with the splenic authority, it's a very subtle whisper, it's like an intuition and a knowing in the moment of if something is healthy for you or not healthy for you. And it's in the moment. It doesn't, like, if you don't listen to it in the moment, like, and you go straight into like the mind to start thinking, it's almost like too late. Yep. Now it can shift, like you can have a splenic hit and then like 20 minutes later, another one. But to anyone that has a splenic authority, really pay attention to that, the subtle kind of knock that you have, that's coming in. Like, I shouldn't go into this restaurant, or I shouldn't go to this party, or you know what, I'm not going to go on that trip. And it may not have a rational reason, but it's something, the more you can trust that, I think it's going to guide you towards making decisions that are more correct for you. Sophie, do you want to add anything?
I was just going to say that for the spleen, it often speaks more in no's than yeses. You may get more hits of no, in making a decision. And it's not like to get sort of exasperated with that or annoyed at that. It's like, oh, it's just giving you like the not that way, try this way. It's sort of like the hot cold game, but it's kind of like your systems, it's going to be a little bit more like tuned into what might not be a good idea. And I always say to people, because a lot of people with the splenic, they think it's too easy, right? It's like too in the now, it's too immediate. And so they'll override it. And we know people who have literally gotten themselves in really, really terrible situations. And they're like, oh, my spleen let me know, and I overrode it, of like just that little tiny hit of like turn right. And your mind can go like, but I'm supposed to go straight. Why not just turn right? Like, just try it and see what happens, or experiment with it. But yeah, it can kind of get a little like, oh, it's too easy.
I want to highlight something really quickly on, like, especially the sacral and the splenic that are a little bit more like in the moment. I've had so many clients where I talk to them like, well, did you get an initial hit on something but didn't honor it? And at least a handful of times I've had clients be like, oh yeah, on the first date with my husband or my wife, like this one person I remember was like, oh yeah, my ex-husband was standing 10 feet from the table. And I went, no, not for me. But then they sat down, they had some drinks, realized I like the same music, the same books, etc., got married, had kids, whatever, realized he was a raging narcissist. Now, I'm not saying that's not part of your life journey, but the thing about authority from a human design standpoint is like, sure, we're going to suffer as human beings to some degree. Like but maybe we can have 20% less suffering, maybe 30%. Maybe we can maybe if we don't make those emotional decisions as an emotional authority, like, things aren't just going to bite us in the ass. We might bring a little bit more consciousness to the situation. And that's what I found, since learning this and trusting that I have an emotional authority. Like, when I find that I'm like on something, like excited or like angry, like I just chill. Like, I'm not sending that text. I'm not responding that email. I'm not making that phone call. If anything, I might write some things in my notes on my phone, write a whole thing down of how I want to respond to someone, put it aside, come back the next day, and usually I'm deleting 70% of it and rewording the other 30%. So be really mindful on that. And you go.
Those three, those are sort of like the most prevalent authorities. When you're looking at a chart, I have a lot of people who are like, well, I have all three defined. What does that mean? So how I like to think of it is it's kind of like a sieve situation. Like, your spleen is going to have the initial response or input on it. If it sort of makes it past the spleen, it doesn't get like a hard no, then it goes into the sacral. The sacral is going to give its response of like, But like if your emotional authority, so if your emotional center, your solar plexus is defined, that trumps all the other centers.
Yeah.
So that's sort of like, I think of it, I don't know why, but this has always come forward for me of like Mario, like that's Bowser, like that's the like head honcho boss that the decision needs to go through. Like the other ones kind of inform along the way, but that's your main one. So even if you don't get the no from the spleen, or even if you get an from the sacral, still wait for that emotional wave to move through your system. The general thing is like 24 hours. It really depends on for you personally and like the gravity of the decision. But still wait for that emotional clarity on it before making the final decision.
I mean, this helps in relationship. Like Sophie and I are both emotional authorities. So there's time where like she triggers me, like, you know, and then I go through my little patterning. And like there's times where parts of me are like, fuck this shit. I'm out. And I don't listen to that because I know I'm on a wave. I'm on an emotional wave. So I let that settle. I come back to neutrality. I was like, oh, I love you. You're my wife. We have an amazing life. You know what I mean? As opposed to like very often, many people, they're just making decisions. They're quitting jobs. They're breaking up with people. They're doing all these things. They're buying a car and they're not honoring that they should wait and take some time. And so I think,
and on the flip side, I bring my splenic projector with me whenever we go just to tell me what's up real quick. Should we go there? We go there? Like, just listen to yourself. Trust yourself.
Is this safe? Is this safe? I was going to say, especially with that emotional thing, especially when two people are, again, with that relational dynamics. And Mike, I love that you've gotten into this to know this of like letting her lead in the spleen department, right? So you can sort of then come in with your sacral of what comes forward for you. Are you emotional or are you sacral?
I'm emotional.
Okay. You're emotional. Okay, so you still have to wait for your emotional clarity on things. So then even again in relational dynamics, it's good to know these things of like, she's probably going to get a hit really, really quick on a decision. You still need to take your time to feel into it. Like, you know, on these big decisions, but
well, it's
really,
interesting.
like,
My wife and I are both emotional, even though she's a projector. Yeah. And so she definitely needs time. The few times that we get in fights, like if I'm trying to get clarity and resolution, no, she needs her time. And she's always known that. And I didn't know that. And now that I've come into my understanding of my chart better, I realize I need that time too. But my oldest son is splenic and he doesn't have any emotions around anything ever. It's just like he knows. He came out of the womb knowing.
And MG's also
that of like when you know when it's two emotionals together, like Yerasimos and I have to know this of like there's times when I say in relationship, if you're two emotionals or if even one of you is emotional and you're in a disagreement or a fight, like stop, drop, and roll away from each other. Like the idiom of like, don't go to bed angry should be like nixed from the household when there's an emotional, because the best thing an emotional can do is like, leave the space, like go to bed, sleep on it, let the emotional wave move through you and do its own processing on your own. Like it's not anybody else's job to process your emotional wave. And also, especially when it's two, it's like I can trigger his emotional wave and then he'll trigger mine and then I'll you know, and then you kind of get into this like
cycle.
Don't, again, the whole the phrase of like there's no clarity in the now. If you're an emotional authority, you need time. You need to process and feel that emotional wave through your own system, then get clarity, then have some emotional sort of evenness. Even like in our charts, Yerasimos and I create another emotional channel. So I have my own channel, he has his own channel, but then when we come together, there's a third that gets created in there. Each one of these have different wave patterns. These are all getting into like deeper territory. But just to like know these about ourselves, like even though we're both emotionals, I have a different wave pattern than he does. So how does he know where I'm at on my wave? How do I know where he's at on his wave?
I just got to say something real quickly is that Sophie tried to break up with me 3 times in the first year of our relationship. So 10 years ago. And we had known about human design then. Obviously we didn't have the knowledge we had now, but we knew enough. And the final time she tried breaking up with me, we had just come back from some like relationship seminar or something. And she's like, we're breaking up. This is it. You don't want to get married. like, or not get married in the moment, but like Sophie was someone who always wanted to experience marriage. And I was like, nah, I don't need to get married. I'm just living my life. I'm doing my thing. And so she's like, no, like we're ending the relationship. We're breaking up. And of course, anytime a potential breakup is happening, it can be, it could be pretty heavy. So we're having our experience. It's heavy. To make a long story short, I was like, listen, we're both emotionally defined. Okay. Like, let's go to bed. Let's go to bed and we'll think about it in the morning. And she woke up and she was like, oh, thank God we didn't break up. So it's just a very simple kind of example of like, yo, know yourself, understand your patterning, and see how it impacts your decision making. And this is where human design is just one way that can support you in living a more fruitful life and a more peaceful life and a more fulfilling life.
And again, like there are other authorities, so we're not going to go through every single
we
one.
can. There's like 4 more that are more rare.
But like knowing these about yourself, again, this is just how you personally, it's best to make decisions. Like there's a certain type where it's like, it's best for them to talk it out. It's best for them to have like a neutral sounding board. Or I tell people, if you don't have a neutral sounding board, if you have this authority, it's like, can you do voice notes on your thing? Because you need to hear your own tone. You need to hear your voice on how you're discussing something to get clarity on it. So yeah, just knowing these things about ourselves. And again, in that relational dynamic, like knowing your son is splenic, he's going to have a very different experience of making a decision than you are. And also knowing that in the relational field, like your emotional centered definition is going to be impacting him. So if he is having a hard time making a decision as a splenic, it's like, can you be like, hey, do you want to go in the other room and like feel into this for yourself for a moment? Just so that he can get out of sort of your field of the emotional center if you're having feelings about it. Does that make sense? Like it's sort of like just understanding how these things are impacting each other and sort of moving with each other. And I always say for non-emotionals, just because a big thing is that this shift that's happening in coming up to 2027 and beyond is a shift in the emotional center. So it's the center that's going through a huge mutation within itself. I think we can probably all agree that we have lived in a very, very emotionally stunted and immature society, and we're moving into a place where that center is going to be really highlighted. And so those of us who have emotional authority, it's really important for us to become more emotionally intelligent within our own beings, be more honest about it in terms of like where I'm at in my emotional wave, what's going on for me, what's coming up. Like I have things with friends now who know this, and it's like I'll call if we have plans or whatever and be like, hey, just to let you know, I'm on a low right now. Do you still want to hang out? Do you still want to be around me? And also, like, I'm not going to then put a mask on and be like, I'm so happy, I'm having the best day ever. Like, it's like, okay, if we were going for a hike, like, hey, I still want to hang out. If you want to hang out with me on a low, would it be cool if we just hang out on the couch, or we hang out and have a much more low key thing? And I can just kind of be in my sort of bluesy, moody place, knowing that this has nothing to do with you, knowing that this is completely removed from you. You can be however you want. But again, it's like coming back into that more individual experience of I don't have to show up for you. You don't have to show up for me in certain ways, but I also don't have to change what's going on. But for non-emotionals, the thing is to understand that 50% around 50% of the population is emotionally defined. So you're probably going to be feeling that in the field from people. It definitely gets heightened for non-emotionals if they're around an emotional who's like, seething angry, and they're like, no, I'm fine. The non-emotional is going to be like, what? I'm so angry. So asking your body the question, is this mine? And especially for people who don't have that emotional center defined, if something happens all of a sudden or out of the blue, I say those are kind of the key words for them to have in mind, of like, all of a sudden, I'm really sad, or out of the blue, I'm feeling really angry. Because it's not that people who don't have the solar plexus defined, it's not that they don't have emotions. Everybody does. Everybody's having their experience. It's just that you'll be more impacted by those emotional centers around you. So if it's all of a sudden out of the blue for no reason, is this mine? Is this mine? And what I've found from people sort of reporting back on this is that their body can kind of shift like immediately, and it can kind of either it processes through much more quickly, or it's just sort of like the knowledge, it doesn't need to be processed through me. And so again, it's that sort of authority over your own system, the freedom to make these decisions. And also, like, maybe I don't want to be in this person's field right now. Like, if this isn't mine, but I'm feeling this and it's really strong for me, can I just leave the room? Can I go to the bathroom? Can I go sit under a tree for a minute? Can I, do any of these deconditioning parts? And so just having that awareness again within your own system, if you're an emotionally defined person, becoming more hyper aware of like being honest and real with where you're at in your emotional wave. And then if you're undefined, being really clear on like, is what I'm feeling mine? Is this emotion mine to work through, or is it not? And I can just kind of put it down. That was a bit of a soapbox. Just because with that transition that's happening, that's a big thing that's coming up and is going to continue to be a big theme in society.
Brilliant, you guys. I think we could do a part 3 here easily. Also, you guys are both practitioners, so I know you have other tools in your bags. So I'm sure also that you use the human design in order to guide your other therapies, and there are so many adjuncts that we could add on. For instance, a simple one, like pranic healing, where you, train yourself how to visualize the different colors associated with the different centers and so forth. And, you can go contemplate under a tree, but what if maybe paired with that, you were aware through human design of maybe your splenic center, the associated color. So just, bathe that center in the appropriate color and so forth. And I've seen real magic happen just with getting out of the mind, not even thinking about the issues, getting out of the intellect, and just visualizing that pure resonance of that color, and really cool things happen. So yeah, the only point is human design can open up so many doorways, I believe. And just in my cursory understanding of it, I see a great, it's greatly uncanny when for instance, just Mike and I, what is his role in the company? He's the networker. I never would have, nobody ever would have heard of anything if it wasn't for Mike out doing the networking. I'd just be out in the North 40 somewhere. So we all kind of have our little roles, and it kind of lines up with what you guys are talking about. So pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely cool, man. I appreciate you guys having this on. I just want to mention too, you talked about like how it supports other work. Like, human design it's a complementary system, whatever. You could be a therapist, you could be, run a company. I mean, there are people who like focus on human design for organizational consulting, like go into businesses and really utilize this to help create teams and have more of an understanding how people can work together. And again, how you can, like you said, everyone has a role to play. And so how can you best play your role? And so this just provides some more information. And like, human design is a big piece. And, Joel and I, we created our group coaching program, Rise Above the Herd, and we're about to run our 11th run of it. And so anyone who signs up to Rise Above the Herd, like, gets a free reading with me. And then during the whole 10 weeks, they have Sophie and me in our private Telegram group that offering consulting on human design, in addition to Sophie's 5 nervous system workshops that she leads in the program. So again, anyone who's listening that wants to go deeper into this, of course, you could reach out to us individually for our own human design reading. But if you want to look at it along with other things, just check out riseabovetheherd.co to see what we got going on there.
Yep. Thank you. That was my next question, is how can people find your work and all the other things? Any other links or things you'd like to share where people could find you other than what you already mentioned?
Sophie, you want to go, and then I'll. You go.
Mine's shorter, I guess. But my website is sophiefletcherphd.com. That has you can contact me through there. But I also do play a role in their Rise Above the Herd program as well. And then I've actually just completed training as a doula, and now I'm
exciting.
also into teaching birth classes. So that's not anywhere website or anything, but it's a new sort of interest, endeavor thing that I'm curious about going deeper into, especially as we're saying, like complementary things. Like I want to bring in more of the human design into that, and even sort of more of the somatic nervous system trauma work that I do. If we can, like, as Ross said, this is for the kids, but I think everything is really for the kids. Of like, if I can like help a mother be more stable, be more regulated, have more capacity within their system, feel more supported, know themselves as, you know, in their human design, and know their child's right away, and even the group dynamic of the penta of the family. It's like that's kind of where I'm sort of feeling this draw of like, if we can get really to the initial human coming in, and then go from there. So yeah, that's a new endeavor, but I don't have any website stuff about that yet. That's coming.
Yeah, and the
Amazing.
only other thing I want to add is just, obviously some people may know, but yeah, I have my podcast with Joel, and it's hereforthetruth.com. So check it out. We have interesting conversations, I think. Obviously, we've had both of you on, and just we're you know, the name says it all. You know, like really curious about things that go on in the world, but also primarily internally. You know, who you are as an individual, really knowing yourself. What are your gifts? What are your challenges? And how can you, you know, bring yourself more fully into the world and create a life that's in alignment with who you are in the deepest level. And that's the main reason why we started Rise Over the Herd a couple of years ago. So yeah, thanks.
Amazing
Hey,
work, both of you.
Oh,
love
I
you
also
guys so
run
much.
really quick, I run a retreat twice a year. It's called Back to You. It's with a friend of mine. And I include like human design in this and nervous system stuff, but we also do a bunch of other stuff. And you can contact me about that, or it's in my Instagram, which is sophiefletcher.phd. It's in my bio on there.
So that's an in-person sort of retreat. Is it Southern California, or do you
Yeah,
do
it's
different
held in
locations?
Topanga. It's held in Topanga. It's 3 days. The next one is in March.
Mhm.
I think it's the March 15th, 16th,
Mhm.
17th or something that weekend. So yeah, anyone who wants to come out to Topanga or is in Topanga area and wants to have 3 days in nature, and again, as he said, it's sort of like the name very much describes it. Like it's all about how do you feel yourself? How do you know yourself? Get back to like sort of the OG you.
OGU. Well, again, I love you guys so much. So much respect.
Yeah,
Hey,
Mike,
thank you so much.
yeah,
We love you both,
yeah.
and such a
Mike,
pleasure.
thank you so much. Yeah, for also always including us in Music and Sky, man. I love you. You're like a brother to me. And I'm just excited for this world that we're creating, you know, like through our networks. And just coming together and just, you know, living our lives and living the truth of who we are. And I think that's the way forward.
Yeah.
yeah, and love you guys a lot too. And Yerasimos, great meeting up with you ever so briefly at Music and
Yeah,
Sky there. I did kind of a half a day cameo, but
it
met
was
a
worth
lot of
it. It's
great
good.
people, and I was looking forward especially to meeting you.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. It was so good to give you a big hug.
Yeah.
You guys are
Awesome.
awesome. All your show notes, in the show notes, your links are in there. So guys, check that out and go support these two lovely sparks of creation. And as we always end every show, remember to get outside, get your hands dirty, get your feet in the dirt, go plant something, go for a hike, show Mother Nature some love. She'll show it right back. And we'll see you next week. Same bat time. We'll be back on YouTube, 10 a.m. Thursday. Love you guys. Thank you so much. Great,
Love
great
you too.
chat.
Awesome.
Bye, guys.